Captain Kim Tae-ho walked through the long metal corridor of the giant space station. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallway as he made his way to the most important meeting of his life. Behind him, Dr. Park So-ra and Commander Lee Jin-woo followed quietly. The three humans looked very small compared to the massive walls around them. The space station called Nexus Prime was bigger than any city on Earth. It floated in space around a planet that no one owned. This was where all the alien races came to talk about important things. Today, they were here to talk about humans. Kim Tae-ho stopped at a huge door, made of some strange metal that seemed to glow. Two tall guards stood on each side. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms and green skin. They stared at the humans with their big black eyes but said nothing. The door opened with a deep sound that made the floor shake. The room inside was so big that Kim could not see the far end. Thousands of seats were arranged in circles going up like a mountain. In each seat sat a different kind of alien. Some looked like animals from Earth, but bigger and stranger. Others looked like nothing Kim had ever seen before. There were creatures made of light, beings that looked like living rocks, and things that seemed to be made of water. All of them were looking at the three humans. Kim walked to the center of the room where 3 small chairs waited for them. The chairs looked tiny compared to everything else. As they sat down, whispers and strange sounds filled the air. The aliens were talking about them in languages that sounded like music, or grinding metal, or wind through trees. A voice spoke, from everywhere at once. It was deep and seemed to come from the walls themselves. The council will now hear the matter of the human species. At the highest point in the room, a creature made of what looked like living crystal stood up. It was tall as a tree and sparkled with many colors. This was Chancellor Veltar, the leader of the Galactic Council. When it spoke, its voice was like breaking glass. "Humans of Earth," the Chancellor began, "you stand before the representatives of 47 civilized species. We have watched your kind for 50 of your years. We have seen how you spread across the stars like a disease." Kim felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. Dr. Park So-ra wrote notes on her small computer. Commander Lee Jin-woo sat very still like a soldier should. "Your species has taken 12 star systems," the Chancellor continued. "You have built colonies on 36 worlds. You have used up resources that took millions of years to form. You have done this in just 50 years. No species has ever expanded so fast." Around the room, many aliens made sounds of agreement. Some hissed, others made clicking noises, and a few roared softly. Kim could feel their anger and fear. A creature that looked like a giant crab with too many legs stood up. Its voice sounded like rocks falling down a hill. "The humans breed too fast. They make too many ships. They ask too many questions about things that are not their business." Another alien joined in. This one looked like a tree with eyes and a mouth. Its voice was like wind through leaves. "They do not respect the old ways. They change things that have been the same for thousands of years. They make other species ask questions they should not ask." More aliens stood up to speak against humans. Each one told stories about how humans had come to their worlds and changed things. They talked about human traders who were too friendly, human scientists who asked too many questions, and human diplomats who made other species think about freedom. Kim listened to it all. Some of the things they said were true. Humans did spread fast across the stars. They did ask many questions. They did change things wherever they went. But the aliens made it sound like humans were trying to hurt everyone. The Chancellor raised one of its crystal arms, and the room became quiet again. "The Council has made a decision about the human problem. We have been patient, but patience has limits." Kim felt Dr. Park grab his arm. She was scared. Commander Lee moved his hand closer to his weapon, even though weapons would not help them. "Here. The human species will follow these rules," the Chancellor announced. "First, you will leave all star systems except your own. Second, you will destroy half of your ships. Third, you will accept council watchers on all your worlds. Fourth, you will stop having so many children. Fifth, you will ask permission before you do anything in space." The room was completely silent now. Kim could hear his own breathing. "If you do not agree to these rules," the Chancellor continued, The Council will use its combined fleets to destroy every human world, every human ship, and every human in the galaxy. You have 72 of your hours to decide. The crystal being sat down. The silence stretched on and on. Kim looked around the room at thousands of alien faces, all watching him. Some looked angry, some looked sad, but most looked like they had already decided humans should die. Kim stood up slowly. His legs felt weak, but his voice was strong. The human delegation asks for time to think about your offer. It is not an offer, said the Chancellor. It is an ultimatum. Choose quickly, human. Your species has made many enemies by changing too much too fast. The galaxy was peaceful before you came. As Kim and his team walked out of the great room, he heard the aliens talking again. Their voices followed them down the long corridor like whispers of doom. Some sounded happy, as if the human problem would soon be solved. Others sounded worried, but not about humans dying. They were worried about what might happen if humans said no. Back in their small rooms on the station, the three humans sat around a table and looked at each other. Dr. Park was the first to speak. 72 hours to save our entire species, she said quietly. Commander Lee shook his head. They have thousands of ships, we have maybe 200 that could fight. Kim stared out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, where 7 billion humans lived and worked and dreamed about the future. They had no idea that their entire species might die in 3 days. We need to call home, Kim said. The President needs to know what we are facing. As Dr. Park started the communication system, Kim wondered if this would be the last message Earth would ever receive from its children among the stars. The Council seemed very sure that humans would have to choose between slavery and death. But Kim knew something the aliens did not know. Humans were very good at finding a third choice when they only got 2 bad ones. The message to Earth began to transmit, carrying news that would change everything. The emergency message from Nexus Prime reached Earth in the middle of the night. President Yoon Da-eun was sleeping in her home in Seoul when her phone rang with the special tone that meant the world was in danger. She answered before the second ring. Madam President, we have a code red message from Captain Kim, said her aide. His voice was shaking. You need to come to the Blue House right now. 20 minutes later, President Yoon sat in the underground situation room watching Captain Kim's face on the big screen. Even through the static of the long-distance transmission, she could see how worried he looked. They want us to give up everything, Kim said. All our colonies, most of our ships, our freedom to travel in space. If we say no, they will attack us with thousands of ships. Around the table, the most important people in the government listened in shock. Defense Minister Park Young-ho looked like he wanted to hit something. Foreign Minister Lee Soo-jin was writing notes as fast as she could. How long do we have? President Yoon asked. 72 hours from when they gave us the ultimatum. That was 6 hours ago. President Yoon closed her eyes and thought. 7 billion people were counting on her to make the right choice. But what was the right choice when all the choices were terrible? Keep talking to them, she told Kim. Try to learn more about their plans. We will figure out what to do. After the call ended, President Yoon looked around the room. Get me Admiral Choi. On the line, wake up every world leader, call an emergency meeting of the United Nations, and find out exactly how many ships we really have. While the President made her calls, Admiral Choi Woo-jin was already awake in his office at Space Command. He had been studying star maps and ship reports all night. The numbers were not good. Earth had 47 warships that could fight in space. The colonies had maybe 50 more. Mars had 30 defense platforms around it. The Moon had 20 missile bases. Against thousands of alien ships, it would not be enough. But Admiral Choi had been fighting battles for 30 years. He knew that. Numbers were not everything. He called his best officers to a meeting. We cannot fight them ship to ship, he told them, but we might not have to. Commander Nam, what is the status of Project Shield? Commander Nam Gi-tae smiled for the first time that day. The quantum defense grid is 90% complete, sir. We have been hiding it as mining equipment and research stations. And the New engines on our ships? All installed, sir. The aliens do not know about our quantum jump drives. They think we still use the old fusion rockets. Admiral Choi nodded. The aliens had been watching humans for 50 years, but they had not been watching carefully enough. They saw human ships that looked slow and weak. They did not know about the secret weapons hidden inside on Mars. Dr. Song Hyejin was working in her laboratory when the emergency order came through. All research was to stop except for military projects. She looked at her current experiment and smiled. The aliens wanted to limit human technology, but they had no idea how far human technology had already come. Dr. Song had been working on something called the neural network. It was a way for human ships to talk to each other instantly, no matter how far apart they were. The aliens used radio messages that took years to cross space. Humans could send thoughts across the galaxy in seconds. She pressed a button on her computer. This is Dr. Song on Mars calling Engineer Nam on Luna. I hear you perfectly, came the instant reply. The network is working. Good, said Dr. Song. Tell Admiral Choi that all our ships can now work together like one big ship. The aliens will not expect that. Back on Earth, Dr. Park Sora's wife, Dr. Han Bo-young, was in the government archives looking through 50 years of records about alien contact. President Yoon had asked her to find anything that might help. Dr. Han was a historian, and she knew that understanding the past was the key to winning the future. She read report after report about meetings with alien species. Slowly a pattern began to appear. Every alien species in the council had the same story. They had fought wars to reach the stars. They had conquered other species or been conquered themselves. They had learned to survive by being stronger and meaner than everyone else. But humans were different. The first human ship to meet aliens had been a medical vessel trying to help a dying species. The second had been a rescue ship saving aliens from a natural disaster. Again and again humans had met aliens by helping them, not by fighting them. Dr. Han made a list of every species humans had helped over the years. The Althari, whose sun was dying until humans gave them new technology. The Vorthan, who were lost in space until humans guided them home. The Kepler colonists, who were starving until human ships brought them food. 20-3 different alien species owed their lives to human kindness. But none of them were on the council. The council was made up only of species that had won their independence through war. Dr. Han called President Yoon with her discovery. Madam President, I think the council is afraid of something more than human expansion. What are they afraid of? They are afraid that other species will learn from us. Every species we have helped has become stronger and more independent. The council likes to control weaker species, but humans keep making weak species stronger. President Yoon thought about this. So this is not really about human expansion, this is about human influence. Exactly. We are accidentally teaching the galaxy that there is another way to live, a way that does not involve conquering or being conquered. As the hours passed, more pieces of the puzzle came together. Intelligence reports showed that several alien species were not happy with the Council's ultimatum to humans. Some had even sent secret messages expressing support for humanity. Engineer Nam Gite reported from the moon that the hidden defense network was ready to activate. Captain Lim Soo-jin called from the outer colonies to say that the colonists were refusing to evacuate. They would rather fight than abandon their homes. Lieutenant Kang Min-ho sent a message from the Althari system. The Althari were asking what they could do to help humans even though they risked council punishment for interfering. All across human space, people were making the same choice. They would not surrender. They would not run away. They would not let aliens decide how humans should live. President Yoon gathered her advisors for one final meeting before sending their answer to Nexus Prime. The aliens think we will choose between slavery and death, she said. But there is a third choice. We can choose to be who we have always been. Defense Minister Park looked confused. What do you mean? We can choose to be the species that helps others instead of hurting them. The species that builds up instead of tearing down. The species that makes friends instead of enemies. Admiral Choi understood first. You want to fight them by not fighting them. I want to show the galaxy who we really are, President Yoon said, and I want to trust that our friends will remember who we are too. She composed a message to Captain Kim on Nexus Prime. It was short and simple, but it would change the fate of humanity and the galaxy forever. Tell the Council that Earth's answer is ready, the message said. Humanity has made its choice. As the message traveled through space, toward the Council station, President Yoon looked out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, alien fleets were gathering to destroy everything humans had built among the stars. But she was not afraid. Humans had faced impossible odds before and found a way to win. This time would be no different. This time they would show the galaxy what humans were really made of. The countdown to humanity's ultimatum continued, but now Earth was ready with an answer that no alien species would expect. Lieutenant Kang Min-ho stood on the observation deck of the Human Research Station, orbiting Althar Prime. Through the large windows, he could see the beautiful blue and green world below. It was hard to believe that 50 years ago, this planet was dying. Kang remembered the stories his grandfather had told him about the first human mission to this system. The Althari sun had been getting sick, growing too hot and too bright. In a few years, it would have burned their world to ash. The Althari had sent desperate messages into space, begging for help from anyone who might hear them. Most species ignored the messages. A few sent back replies saying they were sorry, but there was nothing they could do. Only the humans sent ships. Captain Lim Soo-jin had been a young officer on that first mission. Now she commanded her own ship, but she still remembered arriving at Althar Prime and seeing a civilization preparing to die. The Althari had given up hope, Captain Lim told her crew as they traveled toward the rendezvous point. Their government was planning to build shelters deep underground where a few thousand people might survive for a while. They thought their entire species would be extinct within 10 years. Her second officer, a young man named Park Dong-wook, shook his head. What did the humans do? They did what humans always do, Captain Lim smiled. They ignored the impossible part and focused on fixing the problem. Dr. Chen Wei-ming had an idea for cooling their sun using quantum field generators. It had never been tried before, but the theory was sound. The human fleet had worked for 3 years to build the massive machines needed to heal the Althari sun. They shared their technology freely, taught the Althari how to maintain the equipment, and never asked for anything in return except friendship. Now, 50 years later, Althar Prime was more beautiful than ever. The Althari had used human technology to become one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had colonies on 6 worlds and ships that traveled between the stars. But they were not members of the Council. The Council had never invited them to join. On the ice moon of Europa, Dr. Song Hye-jin was reviewing historical records from the Vorthon rescue mission. 30 years ago, the Vorthon Ark ship Wandering Star had been drifting in space for over a century. Their engines had failed, their life support was breaking down, and half their population had died from a plague. Human ships found them by accident while exploring a nebula. The Wandering Star was so damaged that most species would have declared it a derelict and claimed salvage rights to anything valuable on board. Instead, humans spent 2 years repairing the Vorthon ship and nursing their people back to health. Human doctors worked day and night to cure the plague that was killing them. Human engineers rebuilt their engines using the most advanced technology Earth had to offer. When the Vorthon asked how they could repay this kindness, the human captain had said, "Just remember to help someone else when you get the chance." The Vorthon had remembered. They now ran a rescue service that had saved dozens of ships from accidents in space. They had colonies on 4 worlds and were known throughout the galaxy for their medical knowledge and their willingness to help anyone in need. But they were not members of the Council either. Dr. Han Bo-young sat in her office on Earth, surrounded by stacks of files and computer screens showing reports from across human space. She had spent the last 48 hours documenting every act of kindness humans had performed since reaching the stars. The list was longer than she had expected. 23 alien species owed their survival to human intervention. 15 more had been helped in smaller ways. technology sharing, medical aid, disaster relief. In 50 years of space travel, humans had fought only 3 small wars, all of them to protect weaker species from stronger ones. But as Dr. Han studied the political structure of the galaxy, she began to understand why the Council was so afraid of humanity. Every species that humans had helped had become more independent, more confident, more willing to question authority. The Kelvani had been a slave species before humans taught them about freedom and helped them rebel against their masters. The Thorian colonies had been controlled by their home world until humans showed them how to govern themselves. The Epsilon miners had worked in terrible conditions until humans shared labor laws and safety equipment with them. Everywhere humans went, weak species became strong. Oppressed people became free. Poor worlds became rich. It was not intentional. Humans did not set out to cause revolutions. They just treated everyone with respect and dignity, and that was revolutionary enough. Dr. Han made a secure call to President Yoon. Madam President, I think I understand what is really happening here. Tell me. The Council is not afraid that humans will conquer the galaxy. They are afraid that humans will liberate it. Every species we help becomes harder for the Council to control. President Yoon was quiet for a long moment. How many species have we helped? Directly, 23 major interventions, dozens of smaller ones, but indirectly, our influence has touched over 100 worlds. The Council represents 47 species, but there are over 300 intelligent species in the galaxy. Most of them have never been invited to join the Council because they are not strong enough to demand membership. Exactly. The Council only accepts species that can threaten them. Everyone else is ignored or controlled. But humans keep making the ignored species stronger. Back on Nexus Prime, Captain Kim Tae-ho was having his own realization about the true nature of the Council. During a brief diplomatic meeting with some of the alien representatives, he noticed something strange. The Kethmore delegate, a reptilian creature with sharp teeth and claws, spoke with contempt about the lesser species that served their empire. The Nexari hive mind representative referred to unaffiliated worlds as resources to be managed. Even the more peaceful council members spoke of smaller civilizations as children who needed guidance. But when Kim mentioned human relations with the Althari or Vorthan, the aliens seemed genuinely confused by the concept of equality between species. You treat them as if they were your equals, said the Etherian representative, a being of pure energy that spoke through light patterns. But they are clearly inferior in technology and military power. They are our friends, Kim replied simply. Friends are equals. The concept seemed to be completely foreign to them. In their experience, relationships between species were always based on who was stronger and who was weaker. The idea of a powerful species choosing to treat a weaker one as an equal partner was something they had never encountered before. Commander Lee Jin-woo had been quietly observing the Council's security arrangements. What he saw worried him. The station was surrounded by warships from every Council species, but they were arranged in a clear hierarchy. The strongest species had the most ships in the best positions. The weaker Council members had smaller fleets that stayed farther out. It was not an alliance of equals. It was a protection racket, where smaller species paid tribute to larger ones in exchange for safety. Dr. Park Sora used her time on the station to study the alien delegates themselves. As a xenobiologist, she was fascinated by the diversity of life forms. But as a diplomat, she was troubled by their attitudes. Every species seemed to view the galaxy as a place where survival meant being stronger than your neighbors. They had all learned to be suspicious, aggressive, and ready to fight at any moment. Even their friendships were based on mutual fear rather than mutual respect. Humans were the only species that had reached the stars through cooperation instead of conquest. They were the only species that made friends instead of subjects. As the final hours of the ultimatum approached, the 3 humans on Nexus Prime began to understand the true weight of their species' choice. This was not just about whether humans would submit to Council authority. This was about whether the galaxy would continue to be ruled by fear and strength, or whether there might be room for a different way of living among the stars. Captain Kim made one last call to Earth before the deadline expired. "Madam President," he said, "I understand now why they want to stop us. We are not just expanding into their territory. We are expanding their ideas about what is possible. Are you ready to give our answer?" President Yoon asked. Kim looked at his two companions. Dr. Park nodded firmly. Commander Lee straightened his shoulders like a soldier preparing for battle. "We are ready," Kim said, "and I think our answer is going to surprise them." As the communication ended, the three humans prepared for the most important moment in their species' history. In a few hours, they would stand before the assembled powers of the galaxy and speak for all humanity. They would not beg. They would not negotiate. They would simply tell the truth about who humans were and what they believed in. The rest would be up to the galaxy to decide. The great amphitheater of Nexus Prime had never been so quiet. Captain Kim Tae-ho walked slowly toward the center of the room, his footsteps echoing in the vast silence. Behind him, Dr. Park Sora and Commander Lee Jin-woo followed at a respectful distance. Every alien eye, sensor, and perception organ in the chamber was focused on the three small humans. In the circular rows above them, representatives of 47 species waited to hear humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum. The crystal being that was Chancellor Veltar rose from its seat at the highest point in the room. Its voice filled the air like breaking glass. "The time for deliberation has ended. The Council will now hear the final answer of the human species." Kim stopped at the speaking platform in the center of the amphitheater. The platform was designed for much larger beings than humans, making him look even smaller than he was. But he stood straight and spoke clearly. "The Terran Republic has considered your ultimatum carefully," he said. His voice carried to every corner of the massive room through the translation systems. "We have consulted with our government, our military, and our people." Chancellor Veltar leaned forward slightly. "And what is your answer, human?" Around the room, alien delegates shifted, in their seats. Some looked eager to hear humanity surrender. Others seemed ready for war. A few appeared genuinely curious about what these strange creatures would say. Kim took a breath and looked up at the thousands of beings surrounding him. He made eye contact with as many as he could, human custom demanding that he look at those he spoke to directly. "Before I give you our answer," Kim said, "I want to tell you something about humans that I do not think you understand." Murmurs of annoyance rippled through the chamber. The Kethmore delegate hissed loudly. "This is not a debate, human. Give us your answer." But Kim continued, as if he had not heard the interruption. 50 years ago, when humans first traveled to the stars, we found the Althari dying around their sick sun. We could have ignored them. We could have waited for them to die, and then claimed their empty world. Instead, we spent 3 years and most of our resources to heal their sun. "Ancient history," growled the crab-like Nixari representative. "What does this matter now?" 30 years ago, Kim went on, "we found the Vorthan Ark ship drifting in space, half its people dead from plague. We could have claimed salvage rights. We could have taken their technology and left them to die. Instead, we spent 2 years nursing them back to health and rebuilding their ship." More voices joined in protest from around the room. But Kim noticed that not all the aliens were complaining. Some were listening carefully. 20 years ago, we found the Epsilon mining colonies suffering under terrible working conditions imposed by their corporate masters. We could have made deals with those masters for cheap resources. Instead, we taught the miners about workers' rights and helped them organize for better treatment. Chancellor Veltar's crystal form seemed to pulse with irritation. "Enough of this. We did not gather here to listen to a recitation of your species' supposed virtues. Give us your answer to the Council's terms." Kim nodded slowly. "You want to know our answer, but I do not think you understand what you are really asking us to choose between." He turned in a slow circle, addressing different sections of the amphitheater as he spoke. "You have given us 2 choices. Submit to your control or face destruction by your fleets. You believe these are the only options because they are the only options your species have ever known." Dr. Park Sora stepped forward and activated her portable computer. Data streams appeared in the air above the platform, visible to all the alien representatives. "These are the facts about human expansion over the past 50 years, she announced. The data showed star maps, population figures, resource usage, and trade agreements. But it also showed something the Council had never bothered to track: how many species had been helped by human contact. In 50 years, Dr. Park continued, humans have established colonies on 36 worlds, but in the same time period, humans have provided aid to over 100 alien civilizations. Medical assistance, technological support, disaster relief, protection from aggressors. Commander Lee Jinwoo added his own data to the display. Human military forces have fought in only 3 conflicts during this period. All 3 were to protect weaker species from stronger ones. In each case, humans withdrew once the threat was eliminated. The numbers painted a picture that many of the Council delegates had never seen before. Humans did expand rapidly, but they also shared everything they gained. They did build many ships, but most of those ships carried aid rather than weapons. Kim watched the alien faces as they studied the data. He could see confusion on some of them. This was not the pattern of expansion they understood. "You fear human growth," Kim said, "because you assume we grow the way you grew, by taking from others. But humans grow by helping others grow with us." A new voice spoke from the upper levels of the amphitheater. It belonged to the Thorian delegate, whose species had once been a single planet under the control of a distant homeworld. "The humans helped my people establish independent colonies when our homeworld's government said it was impossible. They shared technology and knowledge freely. They asked for nothing in return but friendship." Another voice joined in, this one from the Kelvani representative. "My people were slaves for 300 years before humans taught us about freedom and helped us win independence from our masters. The humans could have conquered our former masters, but instead they helped us negotiate a peaceful transition." More voices began to speak from around the room. Not all of them were council members. Kim realized that there were observers present, representatives from species that were not part of the council, but had been allowed to watch the proceedings. As alien after alien told stories of human assistance, the council delegates began to look uncomfortable. This was not the narrative they had expected to hear. Chancellor Veltar raised a crystal arm for silence. "Enough. These testimonials change nothing. The human species has expanded too rapidly and disrupted the galactic balance. The Council's ultimatum stands. What is your answer, human?" Kim looked around the room one more time. He saw anger on some alien faces, but also doubt. More importantly, he saw hope on the faces of the non-council observers. "You want our answer?" Kim said quietly. His voice carried clearly through the chamber despite being barely above a whisper. "You have told us we must choose between submission and destruction, between becoming your subjects or becoming extinct." The silence was complete now. Even the subtle sounds of alien breathing and movement had stopped. "But there is something you do not understand about humans," Kim continued. "We have never accepted that those are the only choices. When we are told we must choose between 2 bad options, we find a third way." He paused and looked directly at Chancellor Veltar. 50 years ago, you would have destroyed the Althari when their son died, and claimed their world for resources. Humans found a third way. We healed their son. 30 years ago, you would have left the Vorthon to die in space and salvaged their ship. Humans found a third way. We healed their people. 20 years ago, you would have made deals with the corporate masters exploiting the Epsilon miners. Humans found a third way. We helped the miners free themselves. Kim took a step forward. Now you offer us submission or death, but humans do not accept false choices. The tension in the room was so thick it seemed solid. Every being in the amphitheater leaned forward to hear what the human would say next. Kim straightened his shoulders and spoke clearly and calmly. "The Terran Republic has heard the Council's ultimatum. We have considered your terms. Our answer is simple." He looked directly into Chancellor Veltar's crystalline form and spoke the single word that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. "No." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. No explanation, no negotiation, no pleading or threatening. Just one simple, definitive syllable that somehow carried the weight of an entire species' dignity and resolve. The silence that followed was unlike anything the council chamber had ever experienced. It was not the silence of shock or fear. It was the silence of a galaxy suddenly realizing that everything it thought it knew about power and choice was about to change. The single word no continued to echo in the great amphitheater long after Captain Kim Tae-ho had spoken it. For several heartbeats, no one moved. No one spoke. The representatives of 47 civilizations sat in stunned silence, trying to understand what they had just heard. It was not the defiance that shocked them. Many species had said no to the council before, usually while their worlds burned around them. It was the way Kim had said it, with complete confidence, as if he knew something they did not. Chancellor Veltar was the first to recover. Its crystal form pulsed with angry light as it rose to its full height. Then you have chosen death for your species, human. So be it. But before the Chancellor could give the order to attack, Kim spoke again. I said our answer was no. I did not say we were finished talking. Kim activated his personal communicator. Instantly, the air above the speaking platform filled with holographic images, star maps, ship positions, and data streams that made several alien delegates gasp in surprise. You have been watching us for 50 years, Kim said calmly. But you have not been watching carefully enough. The first image showed the space around Earth's solar system. What had appeared to be mining stations and research platforms suddenly lit up with weapons signatures. The second image showed similar revelations around every human colony world. The Terran Defense Network has been under construction for 20 years, Commander Lee Jin-woo announced. What you thought were civilian installations are actually military fortresses. Our defense grid includes over 2,000 platforms equipped with quantum torpedo launchers and plasma cannon arrays. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber, but Kim was not finished. You counted our ships and assumed you knew our strength, he continued. But you counted only the ships you could see. The holographic display shifted to show human space. Again. This time, nearly 2,000 additional ships appeared on the scan, vessels that had been hidden using advanced stealth technology or disguised as cargo haulers and passenger transports. The human fleet includes over 3,000 combat vessels, Dr. Park Sora added, all equipped with quantum jump drives that allow instant travel across any distance. Your ships still use fusion rockets. Ours can be anywhere in the galaxy within minutes. The alien delegates began to look nervous, but Chancellor Veltar's voice remained confident. Even 3,000 ships cannot defeat our combined fleets. We have over 50,000 vessels at our command. Kim smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. You are right. 3,000 human ships could not defeat 50,000 council ships, but we will not be fighting alone. The holographic display expanded to show the entire galaxy. Hundreds of star systems began to glow with new colors, green for species that supported humanity, yellow for those offering aid, and blue for those willing to fight alongside human forces. In the past 48 hours, Kim announced, we have received messages of support from over 100 alien civilizations. 23 species have offered military assistance. 47 more have promised medical and supply support. 30 others have agreed to provide safe harbor for human civilians. The council delegates began to speak among themselves in urgent, worried tones. Many of these supporting species were ones they had ignored or dismissed as too weak to matter. But Kim was still not finished with his revelations. You also assumed that we would fight the way you fight, ship against ship, strength against strength. But humans do not fight that way. Communication Officer An Seo-jun appeared on the display, broadcasting from Earth. This message is being sent simultaneously to every inhabited world in the galaxy, he announced. Not just council worlds, but every world where intelligent life exists. The message was simple but devastating. It contained the complete recording of the Council's ultimatum to humanity, along with the list of species that had been excluded from Council membership despite their advanced civilizations. The Council told you this was about human expansion, Kim explained. But they did not tell you about the real reason for this ultimatum. They are afraid that other species will learn from our example, that there is another way to live among the stars besides conquest and submission. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were learning for the first time that they had been deliberately excluded from galactic politics. Species that had thought they were alone were discovering that there were others like them. Worlds that had been told they were too primitive for space travel were seeing images of their neighbors' advanced civilizations. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Communication channels across the galaxy lit up with messages from species demanding to know why they had been kept in the dark. Several council member worlds reported riots and protests as their own populations learned about the species that had been denied representation. Chancellor Veltar's crystal form was now pulsing with erratic, panicked light. This changes nothing. The council's decision stands. Actually, said a new voice from the upper levels of the amphitheater, it changes everything. The speaker was the Etherian representative, one of the oldest and most respected members of the council. Its body of pure energy flickered with what looked like embarrassment. I call for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current council leadership, the Etherian announced. This ultimatum was presented to us as a matter of galactic security. We were not told that it was actually an attempt to suppress the natural evolution of galactic civilization. Other council members began to stand and voice their agreement. Not all of them. The more aggressive species like the Kethmor and Nexari still demanded human submission. But enough of them to prevent any military action. As the council dissolved into argument and debate, Kim made one final announcement. The Terran Republic extends an invitation to all species in the galaxy, council members and non-members alike. In one standard year, we will host the first truly representative galactic assembly on the neutral world of New Geneva. Every intelligent species will have a voice. Every civilization will have a vote. Every world will have the right to determine its own future. The chaos in the amphitheater reached new levels as aliens realized what Kim was proposing. The end of the Council's monopoly on galactic politics, and the beginning of a truly democratic interstellar government. Admiral John Ye-jin appeared on the display from her flagship in Earth orbit. The Terran Defense Fleet stands ready to protect any species that chooses to participate in this new assembly. We will not impose our will on anyone, but we will defend the right of others to choose their own path. Kim looked around the amphitheater one last time. You offered us two choices, submission or destruction. We have chosen a third option, liberation. Not just for humans, but for every species that wants to be free to determine its own destiny. He turned to leave, but paused at the edge of the speaking platform. When you are ready to talk as equals instead of masters and subjects, humanity will be waiting. But we will not wait forever, and we will not wait alone. As the three humans walked out of the great amphitheater, the council chamber erupted into the loudest debate in its 1,000-year history. Some species demanded immediate military action against humanity. Others called for negotiations. Still, others announced their withdrawal from the council entirely. But the most significant development was happening outside the council chamber, across the galaxy, as hundreds of species began to contact Earth directly. They wanted to know more about this third way that humans offered, a way to be strong without being cruel, to be successful without conquering others, to reach for the stars while helping others rise alongside them. Dr. Park Sora delivered the final observation as their ship departed Nexus Prime. They expected us to respond with fear, anger, or submission. They never considered that we might respond with hope. Captain Kim watched the massive council station shrink behind them as their ship jumped toward Earth. The galaxy spent so long learning how to survive that it forgot how to live. Maybe it is time to teach them the difference. Back on the station, Chancellor Veltar stood alone in the empty amphitheater, its crystal form dim and flickering. For 1,000 years, the council had maintained order through strength and fear. Now, in the space of a single word, no, everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps, for the first time in its history, it would be better. Across human space, The message went out to every colony, every ship, and every research station. Humanity has spoken. We choose freedom, not just for ourselves, but for all who wish to join us among the stars. The age of the Council was ending. The age of true galactic civilization was about to begin. And it had all started with one simple word that carried the weight of an entire species' refusal to accept that there were only two ways to live. As masters or as slaves. Humans had found a third way. Now they would share it with the galaxy.